Welcome to the third episode of the Katana Learning to DeFi series. Today we have a lot of special guests today. We have the usual Katana team with a couple extras. I'm going to go ahead and let Will take the wheels and introductions and then pass it along.
Right on. What's up, everyone? I'm Will. I'm the head of engineering for Katana. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty encompassing, but that's the job.
That's quite the job too. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Omni.
Hey, yeah, I go by Omniscient, Omni. For my friends, what do? I'm just a support guy. I do a bit of everything, whatever's needed. There I am.
Yeah, I have to give a little bit of shout out to Omni too, because he's like a master of like all trades. Anytime I have a problem internally, like Omni is the one that's doing the explaining for me. He's like, oh, I know how to bridge this in Vault Bridge. Oh, I know how to do this in this interface. So like Omni is like the guy that's like everywhere behind the scenes on there. So definitely one of these guys to follow for sure. And I always, obviously DeFi support as well. And
Absolutely.
then Gaspar.
Like I'm going to throw in, I'm going to jump in real quick there because Omni's like, yeah, I'm just a support guy. I mean, that's pretty much the equivalent of like Einstein saying, yeah, I tinker with math a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And we have a special guest today from Spectra directly. Gaspar, go for it.
Hey, yeah, my name is Gaspar. I'm one of the co-founder of Spectra, and I've been building yield tokenization for 5 years now.
Awesome. And then again, you've probably seen my face if you've seen the series before. I am Billy in the streets, Billy Jitsu. If your favorite DeFi DevRel, right? One of the guys that is in the trenches. I love DeFi. And today's subject is probably the hardest subject that I've ever had to like absorb in my head with DeFi of like yield tokenization, PT tokens, YT tokens, W2F tokens. I don't know. Like it's just such a hard concept for me to like absorb. And hopefully today it's just like I'm able to explain it to you. Everybody uses like the same examples with an apartment and then earning like rent over time. And I'm like, great, that example doesn't make any sense to me. And I go to another video and they're using that same example again. So I'm like, it's not helping me whatsoever. But PT-YT tells you like you're tokenizing your yield. Basically, you know, what the money you're going to get in the future, you're putting a value to it in a sense, in short on here. So for those that are following along, thank you for following along for the DeFi series. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, break it right into the intro, and let's get moving here. So 1 second. Boom. If it's the first time watching the video, this is Katana's Understanding DeFi 101, all the basic principles of DeFi. If you have, this is your first video, we have 2 previous ones on here. One is Understanding DEXs, how they work, which is actually a very useful tool for you to kind of understand as we talk about the pools in Spectra. And then borrow lending as well. Again, another foundational one that you probably want to mess around with and understand before diving really deep into DeFi. And then today we're going to be doing a yield tokenization. So again, real cap, we did DEXs, we did borrow lending, and now we are on yield tokenization, PT, YT tokens on there. Locking in yield rates is basically the entire scope of what you're doing. And then how does any of this work, right? Like it's just kind of like over my head, a lot of stuff. And I feel a lot of community members, when we're posting out these crazy yields, hey, check out these yields, and you see them on the timeline, observe numbers that you see, and like nobody takes advantage of it because they don't know how to, or they're afraid to do it. DeFi can be a bit intimidating. And sometimes when you're not comfortable or know what's happening, you don't make a move. You kind of like a deer in headlights, and you just don't make that move. After this, we're going to be covering perpetuals, and then maybe perpetuals or maybe Katana. But the whole point of like a lot of this DeFi series is one, to learn. Definitely want people learning, knowing what the risks are, what they're getting involved in, right? Nothing is free in crypto world. So, you know, understanding what the risks are, what you get in return for that risk. And then understanding like what Katana is, right? We're not a generic layer 2. We are a specific opinionated chain specifically for DeFi to really maximize your yield on here. So as we learn all these different topics, which is the core functions of what DeFi is, you can then appreciate what Katana is doing or trying to do in the long term of what, you know, you can do for your yield and what you can do for your gains ultimately. So enough talk of that. Let's jump right into the PT-YT tokens. And again, guys, if I am blabbing too much or there's an interesting thing that you want to add in, feel free to interrupt me. Again, if you have any questions or anything in the time on the sides, go ahead and ask questions. I hope there's questions today, because this is a tough one for me in general. So hopefully I explain it better than the apartment hunting one, but let's give it a shot. So coming back to where we are, like with your $100 USDC, right? You have $100 USDC, and you want to maximize that with yield. So usually most people will put it into like some kind of vault or some kind of lending market, right? And we see, you know, a vault that gives me 5 APY at the end of the year, right? So let's just shoot that. So I get 100 USDC, and I see 5% on my $100, and I deposit on there. What happens in the back end is I get a receipt token, right? If I'm depositing on Aave, I'll get like AUSDC. If I'm depositing on Compound, I'll get these CUSDC tokens, and so on and so on. If I deposit on Yearn, on Katana, I'm going to get these Yearn vault-based USDC tokens, right? But either way, this receipt is telling me, in a sense, that in 1 year, assuming everything stays the same at any given time, that this receipt token in 1 year from now, 365 days, will be 105 USDC dollars, right? I deposited today, and then if I come back January 30th, 2027, I'm going to have $105 to claim that receipt, right? And that's kind of the beauty of DeFi, because we have these Lego pieces, right? Where I have this receipt and I know it's going to have a future value, that a market can be built on top of that, right? That's what we mean about like these DeFi Legos. So for the basically the guys that are looking into starting to get into DeFi, more of the devs that are curious about that, like, you don't have to build this borrow lending dApp, right? These exist already. You're building a market on top of that. I'm building a market on top of these receipts right here. So in your wallet, you never see it, right? You don't know it's really there, but you have these receipt tokens in your wallet that basically when you log into your Morpho account or any other kind of vault account, you see your balance because they can read those tokens on there, right? So what's happening on here? So what's really happening is basically our $100 goes into this vault, whatever vault we choose, and we have what our principal amount, right? We have 100 USDC sitting there, and it's earning our yield. It's being lent out, or it's being put in a strategy to earn that 5%. And then that 5 USDC is that yield earned with the principal amount, right? So just so you can visually see the difference between the two, we have our original amount that we put 100, and then we have our $5 that we get on there. But in all, you know, spaces in the world, APY, APRs never stay the same, right?
No.
I know it's horrible. Where's my Bank of America CD rate for 1%? Right? But so today it could be 5%, tomorrow it could be 10%, and the day after it could be 3%. Really depends on the market. And if you were locked in yesterday, you would have been, thank goodness I locked in yesterday, because today's rates are horrible with the market, right? So like, it just really depends on when you come in and when you exit, right? Sometimes when the market's hot, we're bull running, everybody wants to borrow. Everybody's like, yes, they're very, you know, optimistic for the future. They want to buy more, whatever, with leverage. Then more people will tend to borrow, and those rates for your money will go up. And then when the sentiment is low, you know, people don't want to borrow as much. And so you'll see a very, very kind of wavy type of thing of where, you know, the rate that you get for your stable coins or whatever asset you have will always, you know, fluctuate up and down. So it's just never the same, and literally changes within hours, right? Sometimes you'll see something going up super high and then super low on there. So what we've done is we've tokenized it, right? All we've done is saying, hey, you know, we have our 100 USDC, we pop it in our vault. We know that we have 100 USDC that's going to come back to us no matter what. Depending on what the market does, we're going to have this yield that we're going to earn on it. And what they've done is they kind of split the two, right? So we have our original 100 USDC on here, which is our principal. Well, they're just going to make that a principal token, right? And then we have this yield, this potential yield that we're going to have, assuming that it stays 5% for the year, that's going to be tokenized into a yield token. So that's why we get these PT-YT. Principal is your initial amount, your principal, and then your yield is the future yield that you're going to get like within the year or whatever time frame that we have. And that's where we have these PT-YT tokens. So when you're looking at markets, when you're looking at different Morpho markets and all these different options and tokens that are on there, you're always going to see these random PT/YVV. So that means it's going to be principal token, Yearn vault bridge USDC. Yeah, tons of letters. I know it gets scary. You start adding all these different acronyms. It's like a graduate degree when someone graduates with like 15 different degrees and they tap it all at the end of the name on there. Same thing. You're just adding PT in the front of that vault bridge type of stuff, so that's what it is. And then YT is the yield that is being generated.
Hey, before you jump in a little bit further, it might be worth explaining how you got the YVVbUSDC letters in there, because I think that'll help people when they're looking at different tokens understand what the prefixes are trying to tell them.
Absolutely. Let me draw it live. This is why I use Excalidraw. Here we go. So when we're at Katana, what we do, we have 100 USDC. I deposit that into Vault Bridge. Oh, should do the line right here. So my USDC gets deposited into the Vault Bridge. And so my USDC is locked on mainnet. It's using Vault Bridge on there. On the layer 2, and I'm just going to say L2, which is Katana, we mint out tokens, but they're also yield bearing on here. So when we get our USDC on a layer 2, it is called vbUSDC, right here, Vault Bridge USDC. These assets are earning yield on the layer 1, and then that's getting rewarded ultimately on the layer 2 if you are a user of Katana, actually using the apps, not just sitting there. Then we have our USDC, which looks exactly like the USDC on a layer 1. Let me just go ahead and app Katana.network. Oh, it's got to verify that I am real. And then you'll see that I have like USDC, right? You see that little VB? Let me zoom in there a little bit more. You see that little VB? That's USDC, but it's also Vault Bridge here. That's what that little VB means on here. So let me come back here. I want to deposit it into this Yearn vault right here. Let me go to the earn. And I see this USDC vault. This vault specifically on the site is a Yearn vault that has a crazy APY, which is like amazing on here. So I want to deposit into that. So I'm going to go ahead and deposit my USDC on Katana into this Yearn vault. V for vault, right? And so now when I deposit it, it's going to give me that receipt. Remember that in the very beginning, when you deposit to a vault, you're going to get a receipt token. Well, that's exactly what's happening here. So right here, as soon as I deposit in my Yearn vault, what I'm going to get is Yearn vaults Vault Bridge USDC. And I will have those tokens and that receipt token that will allow me to claim anything that the yield that was earned on the Vault Bridge plus my principal amount right here. So that's where I'm getting these crazy tokens naming schemes, right? Every time you wrap something, it'll just add more letters to the front on there. And then if I tokenize that into app like Spectra, and I split that YVVbUSDC into a split, then I'm going to get that PT-YT token on there. And hopefully that explains kind of how we get this lettering on here.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a chain of custody.
Yeah.
And a question here, I guess, for Gaspar is like, we have 100 USDC going into the vault, right? And then we have 100 going for the PT and 5 for the YT. Can you talk about a little on like how is that split computed?
Perfect. Yeah. Let me pop it in right here. Perfect timing for the screen, but go for it. You'll take me through it, Gaspar.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, maybe one thing to clarify is the 5 USDC that goes into the YT. When you tokenize them, they're not generated yet. That's a representation of the yield that you will have given the estimation that we said, so like 5% APY. But what you really do at the beginning is just like when you're tokenizing those 100 USDC, you're locking them in the contract that mints the PTs in the YT. And whoever owns the PT at the end get these deposit back, and whoever owns the YT during that period will be able to claim the yield that was generated.
Yep. That's right on the money here. I'm going to go a little bit more in detail on here. On this is like, this only works with yield bearing tokens. I can't get like 100 USDC and pop it into like a PT Spectra vault or anything like that, because there's no yield being earned on the asset. It only works with something that earns yield. So it has to be deposited in a vault or like a ERC 4626 kind of token where I deposit something and that is working for me. So maybe like, like an SDAI or any kind of, tokenization that will earn me some yield, like wrap stake ETH, that kind of stuff where it's just constantly earning yield. So you can't do it in a raw USDC. So in the example that I have here is like, okay, I have my USDC, I deposit it in a vault. I have $100 worth of interest bearing tokens, right? You have something that earns interest for you on there. And so sometimes, you know, that interest bearing tokens are usually like 99.9 or 99.8 because there is like some kind of some kind of interest rate, like the cost of the interest bearing tokens is like 1.1, or if you do wrap stake ETH, it's like, you know, increasing over time because of the value that you get over time since the original creation of the contract. So for simplicity, I'm saying $100 worth of tokens, right? That could be 0.98, that could be 0.97, really depends on the timing of that interest bearing tokens, right? And so when we create these PT-YT tokens, right, I have my $100 worth of interest bearing tokens that I have here. I deposit it into the PT pool. And the one thing that really like blew my mind is like, okay, well, if the principal amount is $100, my $100 should be PT on there. So like, where do I make the money? And that's what happens on it. When we create those items, there's actually a discounted PT token, right? So that $100 is not necessarily $100 exactly. It's actually discounted. You take a small cut on that, but the difference is made up by the YT token. So that makes a difference on there. So let me do a little bit of the math on here just to not overcomplicate it, but your principal token value is your principal amount. So we're using 100 and a formula, this implied yield and the time remaining. So if we look at that really quick on here on the pools, you're going to see this chart on here. And this is kind of what I want Gaspar to pop in a little bit, is you're going to see these yields that you get right here. And I know it looks confusing. These yields that actually been generated, and then the implied yield, like what are people expecting to get out of these, you know, this tokenized asset, right? So these urn vault, I'm assuming I'm going to get like 15% at this given time. What it's actually giving me is this percentage on here. So the implied yield is something what the market is speculating on. And Gaspar, can you chime in a little bit more on that?
Yeah, 100%. Maybe actually to explain this more visually, can you go to the fixed rate page for the same pool?
Yep.
Yeah. So as you very well explained, you're locking capital that generates PT and YT. Yield will go in the YT, and the underlying capital deposited at the beginning stays in the PT. But this PT, it locks this capital until the expiry date. You see there is a maturity date, 12 February. It means like the capital on the PT will be locked, and you will have to wait until this date to be able to redeem it. But that token can be exchanged. That token is liquid, the principal token, and so because it's like locked until the duration, it is being sold at a discount. Kind of like when we had ETH staking queue and people were selling stake ETH a bit lower than 1 ETH because of the delay to have the full ETH being redeemable. It's the same thing with the PT. And so what you can do is you can hold on your PT. And get that capital back at the expiry date, but you can also sell it, or you can also buy it because there is market for it, and that's what the fixed rate tab is about there. And so if you want to buy like one, maybe you can switch to, instead of having like one vbUSD, you can So like with one vbUSD, you can earn a bit more than one PT, and it means that at expiry you will be getting a bit more than one vbUSDC. And that extra capital is because with 1 unit of underlying, you bought discounted PTs, and the capital that you get, you can extrapolate that as yield. Like if you are buying T-bills, for example, zero coupon bonds. And so basically that extra capital that you get at maturity is the yield, and it's what we call implied yield. So it's what the market is pricing the yield at, and it's reflected in the discount of the PT.
Got it. So I'm going to bring it back to this original formula. So this is where we're getting this implied yield right here. This is where, and the time remaining is like February 12th for this specific case in real time. But just to make it simple, I'm doing like this formula here, basically on 3 months, so 90 days. So I have my 100 USDC, and I'm using the formula. I'm going to say the implied yield is 10% this given this time. So that's why that 0.1 is. And then it's 3 months, so 90 days over a year. And so that makes my PT value $97.68, right? So based on that discounted PT token, if I wanted to buy $100 or basically invest into this PT, I know that this PT token will eventually be $100, right, in value, but I got this discount. So that yield that I would get would be $2.32 buying this on here, which is basically a 10% rate for the given amount of time for the 90 days, right? But me as a pool provider, I don't want to be like, hey, I don't want to lose money on that trade. So then I also get YT tokens when I put money into the pool that are valued at $2.32 when I deploy it. So then I have eventually, $100 total in value. So I still have my $100 USD value on there. And this YT tokens is what actually earning the yield on here. So that's where the discount comes in. And this is what really took me a long time to like understand, is when I have my $100 in interest bearing tokens, my PT is not worth $100. It's worth 97.68 based on this formula at this given time. And then I'm also getting YT tokens that are worth 232. So therefore 97.68 plus 232 equals $100. So now instead of having one token, I now have two tokens in a sense that are both valued at $100. For more simplicity, for 1 year, so you can see it a little bit better, same thing, $100 for 10% at 1 year, 365. My PT is worth 90.91, which is almost a $10 discount, right? So 10%, $100 gets you that, almost $10. And then my Y tokens for a longer time is worth $9.09. So the longer the time, the more expensive the yield token is, because now I have a whole year to earn that yield in a sense. And hopefully that makes sense. I'm looking at to see if there's any questions, because that's a lot to absorb in a sense, where the YT tokens is my right to earn that yield, and the PT token I know will be a safe kind of yield, because at the end of the time frame, I know it's going to be worth $100. So if I see a discount and I want to lock in that rate, like I think that's the rate to be, then I'm going to buy that PT token in a sense. And so basically, little couple notes here, right? The implied yield that fluctuates, right? So this implied yield, you could see that it changes all the time. So those rates change all the time, right? So this, based on that calculation of 10%, that was then. Now, if I wanted to do it again, it's 15%. So that those numbers change and those discounts change. And as we get closer to the maturity date, that changes as well. And I have a graph to help you see that. But basically, when people are bullish on future yields, like buying WT, then the PT prices drop, right? It's basically supply and demand. So if people are like, yeah, the yield is going to go up, let's buy more YT tokens because the yield is going to be great, then the PT prices will drop. You get a better discount on here. And then when the sentiment reverses, the PT prices, oh, yield is going to suck. PT prices go up. So depending on like what discount you get changes on the market demand, ultimately, like supply and demand right here. So when the implied APY is high, when the green light spikes up, so when you get these big spikes, right there, basically PT is cheap and YT is expensive, ultimately. Yeah, people are bullish on the yield, right? When the market was dumping and everyone's like, oh man, I don't want like those markets, everybody's basically locking in the rate, so that PT price goes more expensive. And then again, when it drops, the opposite happens, right? So then it's like, okay, people are bearish on the yield, and then they switch it over on there. And hopefully that makes sense for a lot of folks. I'm going to kind of like drill that over and over on here. But kind of like, what is the point of all this is PT tokens get you a fixed rate, right? If I see that 10% deal on that $100 and I say, you know what, 10% is really good for USDC, I want to buy it, I can buy it right now today and just wait it out. I can buy and forget, right? I want the 10%, awesome. And then, I don't have to really do anything else. That's simple right here. YT tokens are a little bit more exotic in a sense. Like those are the rights to the yield from the principal. And everybody uses the apartment one, but I'm going to go with a parking lot example, right? I'm the owner of a parking lot, and every month I have it, and there's a corporate office that comes in, and I charge $10 per car, and there's 10 cars that park in my parking lot. So every month I'm kind of making $100 a month on there. And so, the World Cup is coming or Super Bowl's coming, and that parking lot is close to the stadium. And so I go to the owner, I'm like, hey, I would love to basically, pay you to get the rights to the parking lot. The owner thinks, okay, I'm only going to get $100. I say, I'll give you $90 right now today to have, the $100 at the end of the month. Right. And so he's like, oh, I can have $90 today to whatever I want day one instead of waiting 30 days to get paid. And so my devious plan is like, okay, now that I know the, World Cup is coming to this parking lot, I'm going to raise the rates to $20 on there. And so I paid the $90 and I'm, hoping to get, the $100 in, but now I've doubled it. I made $200. So I've made $110 profit, right? So I paid the 90 for the right to get that. I don't own the parking lot. The parking lot is not mine. But for that month or whatever that time frame is, I own whatever comes in. So when I get that fluctuation of the alpha of like, oh, it's going to be a hot market or a hot month or a hot season, I can, basically buy those YT tokens and say, hey, this is going to be a good time. So if I feel like the rates are going to go higher, let's say USDC is 5% today, and I have this feeling like, there's going to be a good sentiment next week that everybody's going to go up, I'm going to buy these YT tokens on the cheap and then say, okay, oh, APY is 10%. I'm going to make way more money coming in versus what people were expecting with the PT tokens at 5. These PT token guys locked in at 5%. I'm buying the YT tokens at 5%, but I'm hoping that it goes up on there. And that's kind of like the battle of PT YT tokens, in a sense of like why yield tokenization is not the rights to the asset. I don't own that $100 USDC, but I own the rights to the actual what the $100 earns in yield, right? And that's where you have like this kind of leverage on here. So like if you're bullish on yield and you think yield will go up, you're buying YT tokens. One thing I want to point out is that you're paying $2.32 to control yield on $100, right? So that's a 43 times leverage on yield exposure. This is why yield tokens can be so explosive in either direction, right? So like if we go back and look at that, that math, right? I'm doing PT tokens, like I'm popping in $100. That YT is only $2.32, but I'm earning yield on the original $100, right? So if we start adding more zeros to that, that leverage gets pretty high. If I put $100 into YT tokens, basically it's a very, very large number right here. So that's why getting yourself exposure to yield with a large amount of money is very explosive. It can be very beneficial if you, believe that the yield will go up on there. I'm looking to see if there's any questions. Hopefully that's pretty clear on there. So just so you can visually see it on here, this is what happens is the PT token, you get a discount. So this is over time, right? This is the maturity date. Let's say that's 1 year, and the value of it, right? So on the initial day, when I create this pool for PT tokens, the deepest discount that we're going to get, theoretically, assuming the rate stays the same, is going to be the day I make it. You're going to get the deepest discount, right? And then the most expensive this yield token is going to be is on the very day, because I'm going to have so much time to earn that yield. The value of these tokens, right? PT, we know that it's going to be tradable for one on maturity date, right? So if I bought this token at $90, at the end, I know it's going to be worth $100. That's guaranteed, locked in, no matter what. Like that is the whole function of like the way the smart contract works and how yield tokenization works. The PT token will always be redeemable 1 at the maturity date. The yield token loses value. It ultimately goes to 0 because the yield token, and once the yield is done, those tokens are worth absolutely nothing. So you're hoping that you spent that $2.32 on there when we bought it. At the end, you have more than $2.32 because those tokens are absolutely worthless on maturity date, right? So they just get cheaper and cheaper over time. And that's the way they work. Yield tokens ultimately go to 0. PT tokens ultimately are redeemable 1 for 1. Still a little bit of math on that right here. So just a little simplicity. Here I'm let's go with the PT token first on there. So here I have this PT token. Say it costs $100, right? It's locked in for 5% APY for the year, and I feel like yield is going to go down in the future, right? So I'm just writing it up. I buy at the very beginning. At the end, this PT token, I can redeem it for 105 USDC, right? Scenario 1, 3 months later, APY drops to 4%. I locked in my rate at 5%. I win, right? I locked in more money. I earned 1% more on my money, and I was the winner on there. Or scenario 2, 4 months later, the APY goes up to 7%. I missed out on some of that extra yield, but at least I locked in my 5%, and I, didn't get as much as I could have, but that's the way the game plays, right? On the other side of the token right here, I am buying the rights to yield for, let's say, $250 right here, just some nice even number, but I believe the APY goes higher, so I spend $250 here, and I'm claiming my yield all the way down until these tokens become 0, right? Scenario 1, I was right. The APY increased to 7%. So I claimed that $4.50 on profit. Basically, the end of the year, I claimed that, and I'm $4.50 on profit. I won. And then the other way is it. So the APY drops. I can only claim $2. So I've lost 50 cents on that trade, right? Because those tokens are worth 0. My claim was only $2. I didn't break even. I lost, right? So it's kind of like a little battle of PT-YT, right? If PT's winning, YT's losing. If YT's winning, PT lost a little bit. You know, that's basically the way it flows. So one key factor is you don't actually have to wait the year. You can exit at any time. The way Gerard was talking about, like you can swap it in at any given time. You don't have to wait for maturity, right? Assuming the rate stays the same, and I'm keeping this at a solid, 5% rate or whatever rate is, right? I buy that same scenario where I pay $100, I lock it in for the 5% APY. I feel it's going to go down. 6 months in, I could sell this for 102.4. I locked in that 5%, and he's like, you know what, that was great. Maybe there's another opportunity somewhere else, and I can exit at any time, right? So 6 months in, I will have made $102. Same thing, the yield is going up, and it's like, oh, you know what? I feel like the yield is going to go down. I can exit those YT tokens at any time too, right? The shorter the duration, the more discount you get on the YT, right? So as we're getting, pretty deep into the end of the maturity date, those YT tokens, because they're losing value, they're ultimately going to zero. You're still getting that same exposure to that many, PT tokens, but it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper on here. So just so you can see that live on the yield token, I know that our maturity date is February 12th, which is basically like 2 weeks on here. So if I wanted to buy some tokens, let's say with $10 vbUSDC, I have a crazy yield leverage of 187%, right? If I'm willing to risk the basically 2 weeks of yield on here, and I say, hey, I get 187% leverage on buying this token on here, based on the rewards and the APY on here, my yield tokenization is super high versus the 43% when we started, right? So that risk ratio, if you are degenny and you believe it's going to go up, that yield leverage is pretty high because it's pretty cheap. For $10, I have access to, I mean, like how much money right here on like basically $1,900 for $10, right? I have access to that yield. So that's kind of like what this flow is going here. The further we go down, the closer we are to zero, the higher my leverage gets, the more risk, but the less time I have. I don't have that much time to claim on there. So that's kind of how it works. And assuming it goes on to, the same rate, 5% on here, you're kind of watching it goes. I made this in December. So day one, the PT price was 95.24. My position value was $100. In January, 1 month later, I earned 41 cents. 2 months later, 83 cents. March, $1.23. And you see that it keeps increasing. So at any time you want, you can exit, right? So I can exit month one. I can exit day later. I can exit, 364 days, depending on what the market is. I can exit at any time. So I'm not locked in. So if I buy a PT token, I'm not stuck for a year or any time frame in. I can exit and enter freely depending on the market. Here's the reality of interest rate, right? What really happens on here. This is more like I feel like it's like a breakdance kind of thing, like I'm breakdown. But basically, as interest rates go up or interest rates go down, they kind of match on the market, right? YT tokens will get cheaper, more expensive. PT tokens will get more expensive, then they'll go cheaper depending on like how the market goes. And this is what really happens. And this is how markets are created, because nothing is perfect. Nothing ever stays static at an interest rate, right? It's always moving left and right. But ultimately, we know at the end of the day, if I buy this for 100, I can redeem it for 105, no matter what it's doing in between here, right? But there are markets that can happen in between these situations, right? When the sentiment changes, and if I'm watching the market, if there are those guys that are like locked in or gals that are locked in on there, there's definitely money to be made in between, right? So, running a little formula, and I know everybody's into the AI scene. I always do, like when rates drop, your PT tokens can be more valuable, because if rates are dropping and I have this locked in, let's say I have this locked in rate of 10% and the going rate's 5%, people are going to want into my PT position, right? In essence, right? I can swap in and swap it to the pool and then make money, right? So if I bought one at 5% on here and my PT price was in June 97.62, my position value was 102 based on that old chart, right? My action is to hold. But let's say the market dropped and it went down to 3% on here, and I had originally bought it at the 5. My PT price in June is now 98.55, right? My position is worth 103.48. AI is telling me to sell, right? Because I have basically made an additional 348 out of the $5 profit in 6 months instead of 12. So I can wait it out, right? I can just sit and wait till the maturity date for the year and then still get my $5 profit. But if I'm watching the market and I'm watching things going, I can exit before with a heavier profit and then enter somewhere else on another market, or wait for the market to come down and do stuff. So there is definitely some opportunities that if you had a really nice position, cheap discounted PT tokens, and then all of a sudden the market saying, hey, we want high PT tokens, you could sell your PT tokens back to the pool, right? And then you can make a profit. So you don't have to wait the whole year for 5% APY. Like if you deposit it in a vault or wherever, you can then, you know, see that opportunity and exit. And that's one of the advantages of having the PT tokens and getting it at a good rate, is you can exit it early and earn that rate earlier on there. Let's keep it moving. Hopefully I'm like not losing anybody out in the Twitter world here, just in case. I know it's a lot to swallow. So if you have any questions, feel free.
It is a lot to swallow. And like, if you're not, like, if it's still just like not barely clicking yet, you're not alone in that category. This for me is one of those things. I had to go back multiple times before I finally felt like I started to understand it. And then I still question that decision every day. So don't feel bad if you're not like grabbing it right away.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, again, I'll be honest, it took me a long time to figure this out, and I still feel like I don't have it figured out, to be honest. And I'm glad that I have Gaspar here to like let me know, like, all right, everything you're saying sounds pretty good. So we're pretty solid.
No, I think you're doing great. It's not easy to understand, but I think like the explanation there is the numbers make sense.
Yeah.
And I think like I would recommend people also to play around with the app. Sometimes they see like inputs that they put, output, and then how things are computed. It helps a lot, I think.
Yeah, we're going to do that at the very end. We're going to just provide some liquidity. We're going to swap some PT tokens on there, just so you can see what it looks like, how it feels. Again, like I think I said last time, like you don't learn basketball from a book, you learn it from throwing the ball. You know, so you have to actually just put some money in there and get them. So providing liquidity, right? So I think when I see these rates here, I'm like, why is nobody jumping on these rates? Where's my vbUSD? 87% on your stables, which are pretty low risk on there. It's kind of like, man, there should be a lot more people jumping on 87%. And I'm pretty sure after this video, maybe it'll go lower because it'll be diluted, but that's still a pretty solid number on stable coins, just stable.
That's not a bad return.
Yeah. And so like it, again, I say kind of low risk because nothing is risk-free in DeFi. Anybody that tells you something is risk-free in DeFi is a liar. I'll tell you that right now. I'll be like, liar. There's always some kind of risk, and there's obviously smart contract risk, and you know, all that we've kind of talked about in like the DEX liquidity and borrow lending. But it's similar to providing liquidity on stables, but you're doing it to the same stable. So like when people think of like stable liquidity, they think like USDC, USDT. And then you're fluctuating between the two, and they don't give the greatest rates, to be honest, on there. But when you're providing liquidity on Spectra, it is actually USDC to USDC of the yvvbUSDC for this case. So let's explain that just a little bit more here. So when I have my yvvbUSDC, right, that vault deposited your receipt, I'm going to deposit it into the PT pool right here. What I get in return is an LP token, which is a mixture of PT plus yvvbUSDC and YT tokens, right? And so that equivalent is to my $100 getting in there. How many of each I get depends on the pool setup and what the ratio is. Let me go ahead and go into that liquidity pool, and you'll see that the ratio is specific on here. So if you go down to the bottom here, right here in this pool info, we can see the ratio. IBT means interest-bearing tokens. And for a long time, I was like, what does IBT mean? I have no idea. Interest is basically the yvvbUSDC, this token right here. And then the other part is the PT tokens is PT. So you can see that this is heavily into IBBT. So I'm going to get more IBBT tokens than I would PT tokens, right? More people want PT tokens. So people are swapping in their yvvb tokens into the pool, and they're getting more PT because they're locking in their rate. They're not very, you know, bullish on yield. They want to lock it in now. So you can see that the, you know, the swap's in there. The beauty of this whole thing is that ultimately it's kind of low risk on this. Why? Why even provide liquidity, right? Like let's just cover that into it. You get swap fees for your same token asset, right? So whatever people are swapping in PT tokens or exiting PT tokens, you're getting swap fees, right? Which is, I think, 0.04, I think, on that for that pool. And then you have exposure to a fixed rate, right? I have my yvvb tokens, right? And so that could go up and down. That could be 10%, 5%, really depending on the market, you know, whatever Yearn's doing on there. but then I'm also locking in these PT tokens in that pool. So now if there's a good exposure, I have exposure to what Yearn's creating and then what that locked in is. And depending on that ratio, I'm getting a better rate sometimes. And sometimes when the market's shifting away from my PT, I'm getting exposure to the YV asset all the time. So I have exposure to both, and they're both kind of the same thing, right? Like I put in USDC fall, I'm going to earn whatever the yield that I get on there. And then that yield is going to be coming in here. And then the lock-in rate PT. So a ratio of my $100, let's say this is 25%. I'm going to have 25% locked in rate. I'm going to have 75% variable rate on something that I was going to deposit anyway, right? If I just grab my USDC and I deposit it on Yearn, that's all I was going to get. That's just what it is. But if I put it in the pool, I'm earning swap fees between this, and then I'm also earning a locked-in rate and the variable rate in this pool directly. So I'm still earning yield while I'm in the pool, right? And then incentives, right? There are, Spectra incentives. There are CAT incentives. That's why you get such a high rate on there. But I'm getting incentives for providing that liquidity as well. So instead of just depositing it into Yearn and earning that, and they have their incentives, I'm using that Yearn, and then I'm leveraging that, and I'm putting it into this pool, and I'm earning even more fees with that same receipt, right? That's the beauty of the DeFi Legos, right? I have this receipt. It's doing its thing. With that receipt, I'm earning more money with it, with the swap fees, the exposure that I get, and the incentives, right? So that's kind of like why is nobody doing this, right? Because you didn't understand how to, right? So again, like how I said before, the LP pool is a mixture of the interest-bearing token, which is the YVVBUSDC, and the PT-yvvbUSD. So you're providing liquidity for people to swap in and out of that pool. When I first I thought people would have to like trade, like having an open market. Like, oh, I want to buy some PT tokens. I have to buy it from somebody. That's not the case, right? You're swapping into a pool, kind of like a DEX on here. And so when I'm swapping in, I'm just either trading in my YVVBUSDC for PT tokens at that given rate. And if I'm selling out, I'm just selling the PT tokens back to YV, given that market rate, based on that LP position rate on here. So depending on that rate, I can exit out early, or I can wait it out and just, redeem it 1-for-1 at any given time. And so that's kind of like what I did here in the screenshot, but I just did it in real time, just better for a real up-to-date. So you could see more people were kind of popping in PT tokens at the time I did it. And now as people are more bearish, they're kind of exiting that as well at this market. So there are opportunities to be made, and you see the rate was lower on here. So today's rate is better. So people are like kind of, taking advantage of that situation, right? Before I jump into that, ultimately, why do I feel it's safe-ish? Because if I put my USDC, my YVBUSDC in here, and I leave it for the entire maturity, ultimately these PT tokens go back into IBT tokens. Not traditionally, but I can claim these 1-for-1. That is the nature of the PT token, right? So I'm not worried about any slippage in a sense, because I'm dropping in all my YVVB tokens. I wait the full maturity date. I claim all that 1-for-1 at the end of the maturity date, right? So like any swap fees I made, any incentives I made are on there, not necessarily risk-free because I was part of the pool, and maybe I didn't get the full highest lock rate because of swapping, but between those incentives, I am pretty safe because my stables are still stable. There's no DPEG because it's the same like asset, and I can redeem those PT tokens at the end of the maturity rate, which is February 12th, 1-for-1, right? So like, I'm just kind of like leveraging that position, and that's why I say kind of low risk on there. Because if you do want to exit before February 12th, you could have slippage, right? If the market shifts or anything, I may get a little less. I might get a little bit more. If I'm a locked-in market watcher, I can take advantage of that. But if I just want to do stable to stable pool, I can just drop it in here and just kind of sit back and relax and know at the end of the maturity date, I can claim all those tokens 1-for-1 and then claim it back on Yearn at any time. So, and this kind of got me here. It's like, where do the YT tokens come from, right? Who do I buy them from? And the YT tokens are actually, there's no market for that. It kind of like, I'll explain it. So, because that one, like, wait, I was kind of blowing my mind. So the amount of YT tokens you receive is proportional to the price of the PT and the time left. Remember that initial one of like that chart where I was telling you right about here? Like if I provide pool at the very end, I'm going to get, way more tokens for way cheaper. It's pretty much, how much time left that you get with that formula in a sense. So behind the scenes, you're not really buying YT tokens. You're providing liquidity, and then with that process of when it makes the PT-YT pool tokens, there's a whole bunch of flash loans that's happening in the mix, and it just leaves you with YT tokens on here. So this is more for the devs to understand like how that flow works. In the end, like you're swapping in. I just want YT tokens. I'm a crazy believer that I believe the yield's going to increase over time. As a user, I can just go in here with my YBVBB, put in 10, and I can walk away with, you know, that many tokens for me to get for $10, right? What's happening behind the scenes is a little bit more. I have my yvvbUSDC, right? I'm going to provide liquidity to the pool, which is going to give me this interest-bearing token and PT, you know, yvvbUSD pool, right? And I end up with the PT-YT tokens like we do when we deposit, right? Immediately after, in a flash zone, these PT tokens are sold back into the pool, and then I'm left with the YT tokens back in my wallet, right? So it goes through the whole flow every time. I'm not buying YT tokens in an open market. I am depositing into a pool based on the market rate is how many YT tokens I get, based on how much time is left, based on the fixed interest rate. That is the value of my YT tokens. And depending on how much time is left is how much interest rate or like leverage I'm going to get on those tokens on there. But that's kind of what's happening behind the scenes on there for the YT tokens. And that's kind of like the entire flow of what we're going. So like, again, if I'm buying $10 of YT tokens, it's 187 leverage because I know in February 12th, that's the last day I can do it. So that $10 of YT tokens will be zero. So I'm hoping by today, January 30th to time February 12th, the, you know, almost $1,900 of USDC will earn me $10.01. So it was worth the risk. If I end up with $10, I was like, I did it for nothing, right? I took all this risk for zero value. So depending on how bullish I am on the yield, that's pretty much it. But this is basically the overall what YT PT tokens are, right? If you are bearish on yield and you think this is the best it's going to be, then you go right into the fixed rate PT tokens and you lock in that rate right here. I have $100. I want to lock in this rate at 13% roughly. I want to lock it in now, right? And that's all I do. And I wait till February 12th, and then I lock that in. Boom. I made, you know, 13% up to that time. If I feel like, you know, things are going to turn around and, you know, something's going to happen big, that's big announcements, and I believe that the yield's going to be better than 13% or whichever it's going to be, you know, and I believe it's going to be the implied 15%. Why wouldn't I buy YT tokens and then have a nice leverage on that and have like a really good exposure to a lot of money on there and then earn that yield, right? So I'm basically leveraging my alpha. If those guys that are locked in and they feel like, you know, they look at astrology and say, you know what, the yields is going to go good because the moon is going to align with Saturn, boom, buy some YT tokens, you know, and then make that happen. There's a few more things that are happening on Spectra that I kind of want Gaspar to talk about. But in essence, if you have any questions on like how PT-YT tokens work, ask away. Otherwise, that's kind of like the entire flow of the workshop. And hopefully I explained that clearly enough that you can start experimenting. Again, these pools will only last for up until February 12th. And then after February 12th, I'm assuming there's going to be a new pool in the mix. And that's something that I'm going to pass along to Gaspar.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for that very clear workshop. Definitely material that I will reuse. You're explaining better than me. But yeah, and also, as you mentioned, those pools are coming to an expiry, which is also very interesting because then you can benefit from the short time and play with a low time commitment with it. It's also quite interesting because for like the yield that you're trading, most of this yield is Katana reward. So by speculating on the yield, you can speculate on the valuation of the CAT token. So also super interesting. And yeah, so we will definitely spin up new pools. I mean, Spectra is a permissionless protocol, so actually anyone can spin up new pools, but it's definitely something that that is in the works at the moment. And something also that I can tease, we will soon launch a very big product update for Spectra that we already teased about. It's called MetaVaults, that will simplify a lot the LP experience for the liquidity provider because they will be able to abstract away basically the kind of the complexity of thinking about like, okay, what is my LP token composed with, what is YT Am I pricing things correctly? And it really simplifies a lot of those things, and also remove the expiry component on those vaults. So like kind of automatic, like curated allocation for LPs. So that's something that's going to be live very soon, that will directly benefit those pools. But yeah, we're going to launch new pools for those opportunities. I think Katana is super interesting at the moment in terms of yield. We see very big yield for LPs, not just on Spectra, but also on other protocols. But I think Spectra has a few of the best opportunities there. I think with the jump permission, it's like up to 400% at the moment, depositing through them to get to Spectra pools. And so it's super interesting for LPs, but super interesting for fixed rate takers and yield traders, because you can have like the best fixed rate. Like right now, we can have almost 15% on USDC, which is crazy. And that's kind of the first step as well there as well, because quick alpha, we're going to have PTs being put as collateral on lending markets on Morpho, and we're going to have even more strategy with that, like leverage yield, PT looping, which is quite a known thing in DeFi. So yeah, all that is in the very next weeks for us. So very excited about all this in Katana.
Awesome. Wait, did you say next week?
Oh no, next week's. Don't give me any dates. But I mean, actually, like some markets on Morpho are already created. The meta vaults are kind of like technically live in private beta with the creators for weeks now, months actually. All this is really coming to an end. Just not giving any dates, because every time I said it, it attracts bad luck on the dates. But yeah, I mean, I definitely would encourage anyone to stay like very close to Spectra and Katana and see what's going on there. But like even today, the opportunities are just completely crazy. As an LP, I don't know any other opportunities with that kind of risk return ratio. And really there is opportunities for everyone advertised between the fixed rate or the LP yield, the LP variable rate yield. I think it's very interesting. And for the Katana, like most active Katana people in the community, and very much looking for TG and all this, I think YTs are an extremely efficient and interesting tool to play around with.
100%. I think like anybody looking to experiment right now, there's only 4 pools to experiment with, and I like that, because when I see like lists of like different kinds of things, it's very overwhelming. I'm like, oh man, this is too crazy. So like if you are looking to experiment, and there's basically 2 weeks left on these pools, it's a very short time to experiment with a little bit of money, earn a little bit of yield, or do anything right here. Pretty simple. Like you deposit to your vault, or you don't even have to deposit if you want to. It'll actually do it for you automatically. And then you can kind of just watch the flow of everything goes. It's highly incentivized. If you're looking to get cat token, there's obviously some cat token incentives on here on top of it. So definitely kind of just mess around with it on there before it gets super complicated, right? That's kind of my number one thing. When I start seeing too many lists, I'm like, oh man. And then with the PT tokens, I think if you kind of like search Morpho markets before, you'll see them on the list of the risks, right? Like when we're looking at Morpho markets and you see what you're exposed to, PT tokens are basically locked in rates on there. So if you have those locked in rates and you see those Morpho markets, you know the rate's not going to fluctuate too much because you have exposure to that locked in rate. That might be a market that you may be interested in, especially if you are a number cruncher and you run simulations of, if I got 6% for this year, what would I get? Then PT tokens might be the way for you on these lending markets as well, or like getting exposure through vaults as well. So like those are definitely things that, as we are putting like this Katana ecosystem all together, you can appreciate what's kind of happening behind the scenes. But let's get some tokens. Let's make this happen. Let's look at my portfolio, and I'm pretty sure I got wrecked on it. So let's see where are we at right here in my DeFi wallet. If we remember correctly, my Morpho rate is still looking good. Look at my health. It's still pretty good shape. Remember, I only use 50% on my leverage, right? I only borrow off the value on here. So I was using 50%. ETH was worth more last week. It's not so much anymore. Yeah, but I'm still in good shape, right? So my 150 position, I owed 2 cents and 10,000 or 3,000ths of a cent on here. But again, if we look at that Morpho market on here, I should have had that ready. But I'm earning negative yield anyway, so like I'm theoretically making money on here. I know it's crazy, like you're borrowing and you're making money off your borrows, But let me go ahead and borrow. And I think it was under the ETH USDC. I could have checked my position right here, but there we go. I'm negative 2%. So theoretically, when I claim my rewards on this, I'm making money off that position. So I've made 2 cents in a sense. But when I look at my sushi swap LP position, I'm all in ETH, right? That my range was not tight. I had made some fees, and maybe those fees, made it for me. But now I'm all in ETH. And if ETH is on a spiral and it keeps going down, 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 I will not be able to pay back my $150 loan. You see, I'm in a $10 loss, but then I also have a little bit of money here and the incentives. So I'm at a loss ultimately. So that's kind of a scope of what it was. Once we get to perpetuals, you're going to see what I will do or what I could have done to kind of save that position, right? Instead of being at a net negative, I would, basically have been delta neutral. I know that's a lot of fancy talk, but basically I would have put a position that kind of shorted ETH on there. And then that money that I would have made up the difference over here. So then I can sell this position, close it out with the fees, maybe made a little bit of money, and then pay back my loan and then walk away with my ETH untouched in a sense. So, but that's just kind of wanted to check in where it is. I'm not going to touch it. I'm still going to let it ride. We're going to see where the market goes. We'll see if I get liquidated, but I have $100 on here in regular USDC, and I want to get some PT tokens, and I want to provide some liquidity on Spectra. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go ahead and go into the pools over here, and I want to do this vbUSDC. Right? And I'm going to select VB because I didn't deposit into Yearn. I have no balance on there, but I have vbUSDC. It'll do it for me, right? So I don't have to deposit to Yearn directly. It'll do it for me on here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that in there. And I'm going to go
you're depositing liquidity, not getting fixed rate, right?
Yeah, I'm providing liquidity. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And so I'm going to pop in $100 here. I'm going to do it in balance mode. Ultimately, it's just going to help me balance what it is. What I'm going to get, it lets me know right off the top. This is what I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. I'm going to get 94 on the LP on here, and then the yield tokenization, I'm going to get 27 right here. So between that, it's going to equal about $100, minus swap fees and depositing fees and whatnot. And this is basically what my money will do to the supply chain. I have no impact with my $100 based on the millions of dollars there. So you can see that that'll be a-okay. But I'm going to go ahead and add that liquidity. And go ahead and switch that on here on my thing. So I am adding $100 of liquidity on here. That gives me access to that 80% APY with swap fees, access to PT tokens, and any external incentives that will be in the mix. And it's pretty straightforward, right? But then you'll see that I get that 94 PT and YT tokens on here. Boom. And let's see how quick it goes on my portfolio. Yeah, it takes, there we go, instant right here. So I have my 86%. I can watch my position. I know that I can claim this 1-for-1 February 12th. So a little bit after, I'll just wait, till whenever we come back again, and then come and claim that and show you how that flow goes. And then let's get some PT tokens. I am bearish on the market right now, so I want to lock in that rate for my last $10. So I'm going to go ahead and just buy some PT tokens with my last $10.59. That's it. I'm going all in Vegas. So I want to lock in this rate. Again, this is what I'm going to get in return right here. This is what I'm going to get and be able to claim out. So I'm going to make maybe 5 cents on that thing in that short amount of time based of my fixed APY right now. So I'm going to go ahead and lock that in right here. And for the fixed maturity yield, that threw me off quite a bit because I don't see that in other PT-YT tokens. That is basically the discount rate that you get per token. So if you put 1 in there, basically this is the discount rate you're getting per token for that fixed maturity yield ultimately. But let's go ahead and max it. So don't get thrown off by this number right here. Just know when I pop this in, when I trade this PT tokens, this is tradable 1-for-1 right here. This is what I'll be able to trade out 1-for-1. So you're going to know your final output of what you're not guessing. I'm putting $10.59 in. I'm getting $10.64 out at February 12th. Right. So that is like the easiest thing to understand. This is in, this is out if you wait it out. Now, if I want to trade in the middle, I can. But if I want to just keep it simple, I can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and buy my PT. I'm going to approve my tokens. Again, it's going to put it into the yvvbUSDC vault and then pop out, provide liquidity, and give me those PT tokens. Boom. And I'm done. Oh, there we go. I approved. Now I'm going to do it. And I'll get those PT tokens. And then on February 12th, I'll be able to come in, check on my portfolio, and then ultimately claim on here. So I can see my rewards are already coming in on the top. I can see any claimable yield because, again, I'm providing liquidity. So I do have access to that yield. That YVVB vault is still earning yield while we're providing liquidity. So I can claim it here, and I can look at my total value is sitting right here. And I'm going to refresh again just to see. Sometimes it takes a minute for the indexer for everything to come in, but I am earning my fees on my LP, and then I'm sitting on my PT tokens. And I think I can redeem my liquidity or add liquidity if I want to exit, but I'm going to let it ride on here. And then when it comes time to claim, I just come back to my portfolio page and then claim it out on there 1 for 1 and exit my LP 1 for 1, and then good. So I'm only in it for 2 weeks or 13 days. And then when we come back again, we'll be able to see how it goes. I wasn't very bullish on yield, so I didn't buy the YT tokens, but it's the exact same process. But if you're looking at my portfolio, I'm not bullish, okay? So that's where I'm at right here. Yep. But that is it, guys. If we have any questions or if we have any chat, I'm going to go ahead and not share my screen and kind of like close up and, you know, see where we're at in the space. I know we're getting close to launch time on there for Cat token. So I know everybody's in suspense for that. I'm going to bring it back here and kind of like close it out with any other questions or final comments on like where we're at in the space. You know, if anybody has any questions on PT-YT tokens, you know, hopefully if I've expanded your mind on like how this all works and take advantage of it. There's a lot of good pools on there, you know, the risks and whatnot. And like Cat is heavily incentivized on these tokens on there. But I'm going to let anybody take the mic for just a second, just to see if they have anything they want to add.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing to point out is like at this point, like it might make a lot of sense to you, but then a couple hours from now when you go try to set this up, because this is like a really cool opportunity. There's 2 weeks left in the pool. So you get to go put something in, and then just 2 weeks from now, you'll get to see the end result of what you're doing. So it's a great feedback loop because that's a window that you can see the end of. But when you have questions, you know, for sure, reach out and hit us up on X and ask, because we'd love to help you understand it and elaborate as needed.
100%. I think everybody but Omni has their Twitter X handle on there. So definitely give Gaspar a follow. If you've been following along, you know you've been following Will. Omni, what is your Twitter name?
It is Omniscient, so it's my name.
It's the one in yellow. Just put an @ in front of it. So there you go. Pretty straightforward. Very, very hackable on there. So yes, I don't know if there's anything else that we want to say, but I think we can end it here. Again, this was a very difficult concept for me to understand for a long time. Even though I'm explaining it, like I'm like, am I doing it right? But I think we got the general idea of it on there. And so stay tuned for the next time. I'm not sure if we're going to do it next week or I'm going to do it in 2 weeks. February is a crazy month for the team. We're like heads down with one eye up, seeing like what's happening. But stay tuned to Katana. If you're not turning on notifications, definitely turn on notifications. We have Consensus Hong Kong. Some of the team is going to be there. I don't know the date. Do you know the date, guys? I know it's close.
I believe it's the 9th. Let me double check.
I think that's right.
Yep, yeah. 9th.
And then for those that are watching from the General Asia that's going into Hong Kong, that would be great to see if you have the IRL event happening. Katana does good events, so I'm just saying, like, there's good food probably on there. Anytime you do stuff, there's always some good food. So definitely stop by as we're getting close to, you know, Cat launch. I'm pretty sure like everybody's gonna have tons of questions. Definitely ask in person. And then Denver's coming along. I will be there. We'll tentatively, depending on engineering on there. Gaspar, will you be at Denver or at Hong Kong?
Unfortunately, not too far for me. I'm in Europe right now. I'll be at ECC a bit later. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, ECC is another big one. That's too far ahead for me to think right now. I just got to get to the next couple weeks first, and then we'll get there. But yeah, definitely the most events you'll see some kind of team members out there. So definitely say hi. Again, ask us any questions if you have anything. I'm pretty sure Gaspar would be pretty happy if you have any questions on Spectra directly. If you have anything on there, join the Discord. You can go on the website on there, and then Katana, you can ask the team anytime. I think I've been pretty accessible for most people. I think anybody that's DM me, I've like have answered within the last 24 hours. Usually is my 24 hour. If I'm not answering in 24 hours, something has happened to me. Check in on me, see what's going on. I'm pretty responsive. I don't know when I sleep, but you know, it's been a grind for these last few weeks as we're getting ready for launch on there. So I think we're gonna cut it there. Say your final words if you have any.
Yeah, final words. What happened to the Katana rash guard? I thought we had a theme going here, Billy.
You know, I didn't put it on my cycle wash. My washing machine actually broke, so I have to wait for the washer guy to come in and fix and repair it. So I was like, do I do it? Do I wear it dirty? I was like, nah. But I do have like a Japanese thing, right? So I'm kind of senseiing here. It's basically saying like fall down 7 times, get up 8 or something like that. Some kind of phrase. So one of those things of I just get beat up all the time. But yeah, next time I will have the Katana rash guard. And if you do jiu-jitsu and there's a crypto conference, you'll see the rash guard live on there, or any MMA event. So invite me, guys. I'm not mean, I promise. Well, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for coming out, you know, chiming in. And then stay tuned for the next one. I think we're going to be talking about Katana Network. And then to spin it off as we launch, it'll probably be the perps on there. So, you know, keep it, you know, learn everything that we've done. Keep up to date, and then if you have any questions, feel free to ask any of us. I think we all get excited when we get a DM from people actually like genuinely asking questions on there, like how this works or what's happening. So don't feel like we are like, oh, these guys again or whatever. Like, I think it's been pretty good. I like getting messages. So thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Billy.
Awesome.
See you
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.